The Virtual World Society. Join us in building better realities together.
I'm Tom Furness, and founder of the Virtual World Society, and this is a continuation of our monthly Fireside Chats. We have this little hiatus during the last part of last year and first part of this year, but now we're back. And last month we had the opportunity to have with us Daniel Dabrowski-Bryant. Daniel is the executive director of the Virtual World Society, and he talked to us about the future plans that are unfolding as we speak. Now, today, my special guest is Marcus Shingles. Marcus is on the board of the Virtual World Society, but he has quite a legacy himself, and it's wonderful to have him with us. He's going to talk about. Let me put this next slide up, Marcus, for you. Exponential destiny. Talk about exponential destiny and about metaverse for sustainable development goals and the opportunity for a whole new program being unfolding now in the United Nations with VR. Doug, good to see you here. Glad you could come. Join us up front if you'd like. And glad that you're here. Okay, so Marcus. Marcus is not only a good friend, but he is an amazing guy. And I'm gonna ask him a whole bunch of questions, and you'll probably free associate as well, Marcus, as you go along, and then
All
we'll
right.
have some time for questions from the audience. And the first question I want to ask you is, why are you here?
Why am I here? Like on this planet
Yeah.
or in this virtual environment or both?
Or both.
I'm here because like the rest of you, I think this environment is particularly transformative to education and learning, which is an area I'm focused in right now. Also, I'm here because I've realized in the last 24 months that rather than using Bain or McKinsey or Deloitte consultants, these firms where I was a partner leading innovation, rather than using those resources to build out, help companies and schools and organizations use metaverse, I found out that young people from low-income under-resourced communities are particularly anxious about being relevant in the new job economy. And so when I bring them into this environment, they become tremendous creators. And I've got a whole team of them now that I use on projects that I employ professionally to build out these environments for companies and for schools.
Okay, well, we're going to get to that in a lot more detail, but I
Well, that's
want
why I'm here,
to.
though.
That's right. That's right. I know. And that was just a quick question to get you started. So tell me about how you were as a kid. What were your hobbies? What did you like to do as a
Oh
brand
boy.
new
Okay.
person upon the earth?
Um, I think, well, the story I do like to tell because it's relevant is, my mom, who was an IBM consultant, she wrote my mom published one of the first computer programming books as a woman. It was a book on Fortran. And so she worked at IBM and she was very successful in kind of the computing programming world. But she sent me to computer camp one summer. And this was in like 1985, 86, 87. And we had an IBM PC computer and I really got into it. I was using DOS at the time and Basic A and all this good stuff. But I remember making a Michael Jackson video to Pretty Young Thing and making the sounds on the computer using the analog sound to do Pretty Young Thing on an IBM, right? And so the reason I bring that up is I happened to be an early adopter of the internet, like right when it was coming out. And then I got a job at the Kellogg Company. And because it was 1992 and the internet was really starting to pop up, and I was right out of college, I instantly became relevant and valuable to that company because I was probably one of the few people in the organization that even knew what the internet was and was playing around with it. And this is what I tell young people that I work with. If you get in there early and you understand it early enough, it's not like you got to be a lot smarter than others. You're just one step ahead of them. And the reality is you become relevant for your whole career. And that work I did at Kellogg's instantly got me into kind of a sales and marketing position into global IT, where at age 23, 24, I was doing digital transformation across the whole company, traveling the world with the company. I was really a primary person in the organization that was helping them marry technology to the business. And, you know, that's a relevant discussion that I share with young people, because it's like it made the difference. It made all the difference to me, because ever since then, I've always been a few steps ahead of, I don't want to say everybody else, but 99% of people. And it's helped me in any career I went to. I went to Ernst& Young for 5 years, after the Kellogg's for 5 years, and I went and had my own business for 7 years, and I went to Deloitte as a partner for 5 years, and I went to be the CEO of Enterprise for a couple of years, and then I went to Bain Consulting, and now I'm doing a nonprofit and doing my own work again. But in every single one of those positions, it just helped that I knew, kind of like all of us, we know what the metaverse is. We know how to build in these environments. We know how to create. And for most people, that's going to give you a leg up for the rest of your career, because the metaverse is the next big thing, I think, in the evolution of the internet. So I mean, that was all rooted back when, thanks to my mom to sending me to computer camp, which I think I wanted to go. I remember there's a cute girl in it, so I remember wanting to go for that reason, but not so much about learning computers, but it worked. Whatever gets you there, right?
That's right. Okay, so your take-home story here, we're going to hear more about, certainly, is the power of young people, and given the opportunity, they can make a real contribution from day one. But you had this sort of sidetrack on the X Prize. Tell us a little bit about that. Maybe people don't even know what the X Prize is. Why don't you go into that a little bit?
Yeah, it was an interesting development in my career, because at the time I was a partner at Deloitte Consulting. I led was one of the key leaders of the innovation practice, particularly innovation that dealt with emerging technologies. So many of you might have heard of Singularity University. It's up at the NASA campus up in Silicon Valley. It was started several years ago by a friend of mine, Peter Diamandis. And so Peter and I created some programs between Deloitte Consulting, X Prize, and Singularity University. Peter's the founder of Singularity University and of X Prize. Now, X Prize is a nonprofit that looks at big challenges facing the world, and then identifies challenges that aren't getting solved by commercial ventures or entrepreneurs because there's not enough money to be made in it yet, but it's still a big problem facing the world. So they put it into the game theory, prize theory, incentive competition format, which is really an innovation science, in order to crowdsource genius from the crowd to solve a problem by gamifying it as a way to incentivize people to try to solve it by putting 20 million, 30 million or larger purses on it. Elon Musk just gave $100 million of his own personal money to the Carbon X Prize, which was announced about 5 months ago. So, but I was at Deloitte, and Peter and I were doing these programs between Singularity University, X Prize, and Deloitte. We did a lot where we brought CEOs of Fortune 500 companies together as part of a membership. We really introduced them to, Philip Rosedale, who a lot of you know, when we talked VR, or 2012, this is, we're talking to them and introducing to the major players on blockchain before it was really even being talked about with Bitcoin, artificial intelligence, 3D printing, biotech, nanotech, quantum computing, advanced robotics, all these topics. And so I did that work, and I really got endeared to the X Prize family and the team and Peter's vision. And it just turned out that Peter was ready to move on from his CEO and founder position. So I took the executive position there for a couple of years. It was quite a transition to move into the nonprofit space. I was very passionate about the work, because it seemed like it was applying technology towards solving big problems, which I think for any of us that are pretty savvy and experienced and experts in some of these technologies, it gets a little bit old, if your whole workday is helping, company A sell more sugar water. So it was a really, for me, it was a very happy thing to be able to transition towards, let's roll up our sleeves and really dig into how we use tech for good and make some big impacts for it. And I definitely like spending my time doing that more so than the commercial side. So yeah, I did X Prize for a couple years, and then I left there and I went to Bain Consulting right before COVID, and I started to make a transition to launch a nonprofit, which I can, we can talk a little bit about that. But I basically, this was around 2019, 2020, before Zuckerberg changed his name to Meta. So it was before people were calling it Metaverse. I was calling it Spatial Web at the time. But 2 years ago, I was out working. I had board of directors meetings with large Fortune 500 executive teams. As soon as the Oculus Quest came out, basically, that was kind of the kicker for me, was like, this thing finally is at a price point that you can scale it, quality. Some of the quality problems have been fixed, and you can do some pretty interesting things in these environments. This is dating back 18 months now, right? And so that was when I realized, okay, I've been talking and dealing with AR, VR for a while, but now I think we've hit this inflection point. And then I started to see, and Tom, I reference this a lot with you. I saw a PricewaterhouseCoopers study come out in 2020. I don't know if any of you have seen this study. It's worth Googling because you'll find it easy enough. It's just PricewaterhouseCoopers reality study. And it was a really good efficacy study on VR where they compared a control group of classroom learners to digital online learners and virtual reality learners. And the statistics specifically from the results of that very controlled study were VR learners were 4x faster to train, 4 times faster to train, 2.75 times feeling more emotionally connected to the content, 3.75 times more likely to act on issues of what they learned about. And then they showed some data in there that showed that once you get over some initial overhead costs, you can scale this faster than you can other types of learning, classroom learning, and others. So, that data was pretty intriguing, and I felt like that was probably the case just by being in these environments and working with some young people out of South Central Los Angeles that I've been mentoring for years. But then now, fast forward 2 years later, I've done many projects with schools, many projects with young people, many education learning initiatives. And yeah, I think the data is actually, if you did that study right now, instead of 2020 when the technology was out there, that was like 20 years ago. 2 years ago is like 20 years ago in this field. So if you look at, if that was the PricewaterhouseCoopers results, if they were that significant back in 2020, think about where it would be today. And even if they were the same, it would be extraordinary. But they're much more, they're even superior to those numbers. And that's what I've learned in my own experience. Young people I get in these environments, the way that your amygdala and your hippocampus just react to this environment, your memory and your attention and everything. If you create the proper learning environments in here, it is superior for education and learning. And so we took that right to the 6th largest school district in the United States, Broward County. We currently are doing a big project in Chicago with a public school and a big project in Los Angeles. We'll talk more about it. I'll just plant the seed. We go into schools that are in low-income communities, some of the roughest in the country, and we buy them all headsets, not everybody in the school, but a group of like 30 or 40 teachers, students, librarians, principals, administrators, and we engage them on a 6-month transformative initiative to where they actually build out pedagogies for education and learning in this environment to completely leapfrog their education capabilities, and it's working. And the kicker on all this is the team that I use to do that work with the schools is not Bain or Deloitte because we would be too expensive. The resources are all 19 and 20-year-olds out of South Central Los Angeles from my team. So it's peers teaching peers. And they're and the students that I use, the young people that I use to do this work, arguably are some of the best metaverse designers in the world right now because we've done over 25 projects together.
Well, where did you find these kids to begin to identify? How did you go about recruiting them?
Yeah, the initial group of young people back in 2015, I was doing that program with Peter Diamandis up at Singular University with corporate executive teams. We had the C-suite of Caterpillar, of Coca-Cola, of Wells Fargo, of Hershey's. We had all these executive teams, and we were talking to them about business strategy as well as introducing them to this technology and this breakthrough innovations that were taking place. And so I simply saw an article in Los Angeles where I live. I saw an article out of a school called Jefferson High School in South Central Los Angeles. It's actually a rather famous high school because it's it had such turmoil. It kind of got infamous, but it was a high school in South Central Los Angeles that got so bad they had to shut it down basically. And then the school district decided to put out a request for proposal, see who could help them reinvent the school. It was like a scorched earth thing. So they put out a national RFP and they got, professional firms to come in and propose how they would reinvent the school, et cetera. And I was reading in the LA Times that the article was talking about how the RFP, the award, the contract was awarded to a group of parents from the community that came in with a proposal, which was I thought
From
was
the
pretty
actual
interesting.
community there in LA?
Yes, from the actual community where they said, "Hey, we'll take ownership of this thing and we'll transform it. Let's put people in outfits and let's call it Nava College Prep, so it seems like a college prep school, and let's rebrand it." And so I was like, "Man, this is really innovative." And I read about the principal. I thought the principal was like a young guy. He seemed really innovative. Like to break rules a little bit, kind of like me. Just kind of wanted to just try to do the right thing and do it quickly without all the bureaucracy. In 2015, I reached out to him and I said, "Look, I read this article, see all this amazing stuff you're doing. I come down to the school and talk to you because I think there's a question I have for you." So he's like, "Absolutely." I went down there. I said, "Listen, you're in your I love what you did. Everyone's got college uniform. Everyone's got uniforms. You rebranded the school. You got computers for everybody. Are you teaching anything about AI, robotics, 3D printing, biotech, blockchain, nanotech, quantum computing, VR, AR, spatial web, metaverse, advanced robotic?" He's like, "None of those." "What do you mean? What are those?" And I said, "Well, that's the problem. I think the relevancy of what you're teaching, and more importantly, I don't think you have to be experts in these things. I just think you have to know about all of them enough as a generalist, because if you know all these tools that are now out there, any business or organization, you're going to be very valuable because you know what machine learning AI is. You know what autonomous driving vehicles are. You know what blockchain is." And remember, this was 2015. So this was before a lot of these terms were. So he says, "Yeah, I totally agree." I said, "Well, why?" I said, "Look, I do a program up at the NASA campus for corporate executive teams. Why don't I just come here and put it into language that your young people understand? I'm sure they're going to love it because I've got two kids that went to college and they were super excited about this stuff. And even though my daughter went to a private college in California, she studied as a biology major, and she didn't, I asked her one day, "Are they teaching you CRISPR-Cas9 in your classes, hun?" "No, what's that?" I was like, "Okay, well, you go to a private university that costs a lot of money and they're not teaching this. I wonder what's happening in a public school system in LA." It's like you're not even being taught in a private school things that are relevant if you're not learning about CRISPR in your biology class. So yeah, so we did that. That's how I met all these young people. And I'm happy to say the main young people that I work with completely adopted the program. We changed the curriculum. We taught them about all this stuff. We took them on site visits to 3D printing capabilities. At my friend who was the CEO of 3D Systems, we took them to the 3D printing capability, showed them that. We had people come in and experts from blockchain and all this stuff. And most importantly, I taught them entrepreneurship around this, like modern day entrepreneurship. So I didn't teach them technical side of learning all this stuff. I use that as the wow factor to get the students engaged in learning. When you start talking about 3D printing livers, you know, which is a thing now, right? Back in 2015, it seemed like science fiction still. Now we realize it's a thing. That piques interest in young people. They're like, "Tell me more about this." Learning got exciting again. So I use that kind of as the gateway drug to get them excited into learning. And then I said, "Look, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you don't have to be experts in any of this stuff. You can be a generalist in any of this stuff, but you have access to these things more than you know. You can get access to 3D printers. You can get deep learning AI on the cloud for free. Like you can start proactively planning." I taught them how to be entrepreneurs. And then fast forward to 2020, 2019, several of those students had their own businesses and were very successful. Literally successful businesses, ones that made sense. And even more happy about this was the businesses. I taught them about identifying market need and where there's a gap in terms of providers. And so a lot of them created businesses that they were able to go out and help their own local community there in South Central. And Marco Vargas, who's my co-founder at Exponential Destiny, he was the valedictorian of his high school. He got an Ivy League scholarship, full-ride scholarship. So he was a rock star. And he and I connected in 2020, and he's got two businesses he's running, and he's employing some of the old team. And when COVID hit, we just decided that with everyone bailing out of school, so this was like literally a conversation where I called him. I said, "Marco, because I keep in touch with him and still mentor him. Like, Marco, I see that the headlines in the Los Angeles Times saying that everybody's AWOL, like the school shut down because of COVID. Everyone's at home and no one's attending online learning, of course. Like, so a lot of people didn't even have internet access." He's like, yeah, it's pretty disastrous. Now he's out of school, but he still lives in the community. He's like, yeah, it's pretty nuts. Like nobody's going to school. Like everyone's losing a whole year of school. I was like, why don't we revamp? We called it Exponential Entrepreneur Program at the time. It was called Exponential Entrepreneur. I said, why don't we revamp that program and just have a daily web call on Zoom where we get people excited about this stuff and teach them this stuff, just like I taught you the last 5 years. He's like, let's do
Mhm.
it. So we got a bunch of the old team back together and we started doing that. We just started putting feelers out to communities, some in Chicago, some people from Detroit, your group from Los Angeles. We just got on a daily call with them and just try to do what we did 5 years ago in the classroom. Again, just to get them excited and get them attending something educational because they weren't going to school. That started as a program. If you go to their website, exponentialdestiny.org, it still has like that old flavor of us just doing this
Mhm.
weekly thing. The goal was we're going to teach you how to be entrepreneurs so you can start making some income within the next 6 months. And it's not as hard as it looks. The web is a
It's
big
work.
place. You'll find something. Exactly. And
Yeah.
yeah, and
My
and that
exponential destiny
what's that?
name, exponential destiny.
Well, so we created that program and it was because of COVID. We're like, don't let COVID disrupt your destiny. That was
Mhm.
kind of our theme. I think that's on the original logo of our Exponential Destiny logo. It was like, don't let the coronavirus disrupt your destiny. It was basically saying to people, remember, this was that everyone like is like the wheels are falling off because COVID hit and no one knew what was going on. We didn't know if we'd ever be going
Mhm.
back to school. That was the time. So the theme of it was like, don't let COVID and this whole dilemma with this pandemic freak you out enough to where like your whole destiny of what you're going to do with your life
Mhm.
is now up in the air. So control your destiny. And we were all about exponential technology. So we tagged it exponential destiny. And long story short is we posted every video. We'd have a whole deep dive where I would educate them on blockchain in language that a 19-year-old out of South Central really understood. Now they're eloquent at describing blockchain, better than most adults, right? And then we talked about 3D printing and we talked about robot. I mean, we really talked, and then I talked about how to do crowdsourcing and crowdfunding. And I mean, taught them skills that were really valuable. So they got them excited because they started to connect all the dots here and put it together in terms of their own business models and plans. The thing that got interesting was while I was doing that, Peter Diamandis has for those of you that know Peter, because I know he's a pretty well known individual, he does this thing called Abundance 360, which is 500
Mhm.
executives that come together in person every year where he brings in people to kind of like what we were doing with those Fortune 500 exec teams to teach them about how to be entrepreneurs. Basically, what I was doing with young people, he's doing with adult entrepreneurs. As a matter of fact, just last weekend, he had Abundance 360, but he had like Eric Schmidt is there talking about stuff and Astro Teller from Google X and just like the leading people in AI, just he really is able to bring quite an interesting network of people that come firsthand and talk to entrepreneurs about how to use new emerging technologies. And so
Mhm.
what happened was Peter asked me to come present on virtual reality and spatial web metaverse a year ago at his Abundance 360. I was going to be the keynote speaker on that topic, the expert. And I said to Peter, Peter, what would be really fun is rather than me just speaking about the topic, why don't we get everybody headsets? He's like, Marcus, well, there's 500 people. I was like, yeah, get 500 virtual reality headsets, give it to them as a holiday gift. I mean, they all pay membership fees, so get them a gift.
Mhm.
And then we will literally have a whole discussion in virtual reality with 500 people. So, this is why I love Peter because he's like, yeah, let's do it. This is like 3 months before the summit. He's like, let's do it. And then, and I was like, Peter, what would be even better? Why don't we take your 500 members? Let's have a pre-call with them like next week, and we'll offer 3 or 4 of them to do a proof of concept with me. So that way, when we have the summit in 3 months from now, we can share what these 3 or 4 members did as a proof of concept to show all their peers does this work around their business to use these environments. And that will be very, very powerful. Then people can walk in and tour what one of their peers had done, whether it was a consumer product company or a financial advisory firm or what have you. And so that's what we did. And we asked the community, and sure enough, all of them wanted to do the proof of concept. We could only do 4 or 5, and we ended up doing 7. We ended up doing 7. And then I had this situation where I had 7 projects I needed to deliver in 3 months' time and build out these VR environments, right? And I didn't have a team because I wasn't going to pull Bain resources into it because they're, $600-700 an hour. Um, and they don't know anything about it, quite frankly. They're not the best resource for it. Not to be derogatory on Bain, but it's not the skill set that's required. So I turned to Marco and the Exponential Destiny team, who I'm on calls with every day. I said, guys, I've taught you a lot about virtual reality. We've been in this environment. Why don't you shadow me on a few of these projects and then start helping me where you can help me? So they got on calls with me with every CEO that I talked with and just listened in on how I had this dialogue with the CEO about what are your business needs? Where are you trying to improve your brand equity or revenue or cut cost? And is there a place for virtual reality to help you with this? Maybe it's training. Maybe it's a sales showroom. Maybe it's human resource department, and you have each employee can have their own HR space in virtual reality where they have their 401k on the wall and their career path and their progress report. Who knows? Let's talk to these executives and figure it out. So my team heard me talking and having these conversations with these 7 Abundance 360 executives. One was a group that was building an airport in Thailand. One was a group that sold real estate. One was a large consumer product cosmetic firm. One was a financial advisory firm. So they got to see all these different businesses. And within about 4 weeks, and this was a 3-month project for these 7 companies, in about 4 weeks, that team of young people I had were doing all the work. They were building out the spaces, creating it all, and they were just loving it. And so they became professionals in the space. Then after we did Abundance 360, we brought everyone into the space. We had the 500 headsets. It all went great. Then guess what happened? Another group of Abundance 360 members said, hey, we want to do projects too. This time around, I was able to professionally employ all those young people from South Central as professionals now. And they were the ones having the dialogue with the clients and building out the spaces. One of them, in fact, was working at Target stores a year before. He did a project with me with the global consumer product cosmetic company. And when we got done with that proof of concept for this cosmetic company that has 200,000 employees around the world, they wanted to use it for training and other things. Once we got finished, Tom, the CEO of this cosmetic company, she said, Marcus, great proof of concept. We're going to move forward with your strategy. We're going to build out a department. We're going to build out a capability. We think this is ready for prime time. We want to scale this. Do you have anyone you can refer and recommend to us that we can use to help us build this out, be part of our organization? I said, well, what about Juan? Oh, Juan, the 19-year-old that was part of the project? Well, yeah, we loved him, but we don't want to steal him from you. And I'm like, no, steal him from me. That's the whole purpose. Employ him, please. And so he's been working there as a professional as the head of the VR department.
Well,
Isn't that crazy?
19. How much is he making?
These are salaries between right now we're putting people on salary of about $55,000 a year as a 20-year-old. Starting position, if you're coming in to if you're coming in and you don't have that much experience, we pull you in at 45 grand a year. It's about $28 an hour. And then if you've actually done some projects and you're a team lead, which I've got 7-8 people on my team that are all team leads, they're all at annualized equivalency to about $57,000 a year. That's what they're getting paid. And we just raise, and I do that as part of my nonprofit. I do it pro bono. So unless it's a very commercial project for a business deliverable, that's how I get compensated. The work that I do with my team, which we transitioned because we like doing the work for companies, but we got much more excited. We can talk about this. We started working with school districts, same projects, but doing it with schools. And for that, I raised money as a nonprofit to do it. So I've raised $400,000 recently from the founder of Mesmerize, platform Mesmerize, that CEO in that group. They gave us $400,000 as a donation to go in and help Chicago and Los Angeles schools transform the way they do education and learning. And that I do almost entirely pro bono, and all that money that we raise is used to pay the young people. When we go into a school, we tell the seniors of the high school, we're going to come into this school and we're going to help you over the next 5 months build out a new curriculum in virtual reality that's going to be much more effective, and do some experiments to see if we can figure out new ways to teach and learn in this environment. And by the way, when we're done with this, not only did you learn a new skill set helping your own school use this capability moving forward, but when you graduate, please come work for us because we'll hire you.
Yeah. Oh, pipe.
Yes. Yeah.
These wonderful people. Well, Marcus, this is just amazing evolution from where you were to where you are now, and especially working with these young people. And you've hit nerve of how these young people are really capable of doing things that they never imagined they can do. It's by giving them
the thing I would mention too,
opportunity.
Tom, about that, so it doesn't seem to demystify it. I mean, not all young people, especially from low-income community that under-resourced, who probably didn't get a lot of technical skills, from their school, or from their mentorship around them. The thing that why this works with the metaverse is it's a non-coding coding environment. For example, if Virtual World Society came and said, "Hey, we want to build out a space that we can have a fireside chat," if you wanted Exponential Destiny to build that for you, I mean, this is what we do for clients. We'll build out, whole environments and then animate them and make spaces. If you look around at this room, you could put this room together without any coding. So this is basically a website that's three-dimensional. Rather than taking HTML and Python to build this room like we had to do in the 90s, it's literally you take that carpet and you lay it down. You take these floor tiles, you lay it down like a carpenter. You use your hands and your virtual hands to make the space. You don't even code. So now you can create things without coding, which means the next generation of the internet does not require a hard coding skill. And even getting digital objects like that chair, years ago, I had to hire someone to actually design that chair for me and probably pay them a few $100 to actually build that chair. That's what my son does now. He designs digital art like this. You used to have to buy that stuff, which would make it expensive, or try to get in the blender and make it yourself. Now it's like clip art. That's a dime a dozen. I can find 1,000 chairs like that online for free, or pay $1 for it online. So I could create this whole space within a day or two. So I met with a group of young people from some low income community as my team. And so we can go out of this space and keep coding the world of the metaverse. And if you're a business and you want us to build, if you're building an airport in Thailand, great. You want us to build a digital twin of it? We can do that. We can do it without coding skills. So Samantha, who's on my team, she's 20 years old now. She's 21 years old. She's probably my strongest resource, meaning the most efficient and productive. She's an art major. She's not technical at all. And so that's kind of where the light bulb goes off on some of these young people when you introduce them to this new space of coding, but it's a non-coding coding, they realize they're really good at it, and they realize their creative strengths actually are more of an asset to them than their technical strengths in an environment like this. So that was the shift, and that's also why we launched that prize with the support of the ITU of the United Nations.
Okay, let's get into that. So we're going to shift a little bit. We've been talking about exponential destiny and the young people and how it evolved to the point where not only do you have this pipeline of these wonderful kids that you were able to board and train, and then work with these executives to bring VR to them. You've also have a history of working with the United Nations. And why don't you back up a little bit and tell us about that? Especially when
Sure.
associated with artificial intelligence, and then how that
Yeah.
leading to what we're going to be talking about here a little bit later. Okay.
Yeah, there's a few groups that I worked with in my career. So right now I'm on the board of Stanford University's Disruptive Tech and Digital Cities program, which is run by Michael Steep. It's a relevant role for me on that because my day job is I'm building a smart city in Chiang Mai, Thailand, in northern Thailand, as you know. That's what I do for that's my day job. That's where I make my income. Is designing a smart city in northern Thailand in Chiang Mai on 15 square miles. And I also work with the World Economic Forum. I'm part of the expert network. I'm currently doing a blockchain supply chain initiative research for them, in which you guys will like this. Net of it is you go to a restaurant, you order sustainable food, you can learn and see everything about it. It's very transparent. And the reason all the data is there all the way down to the farmers, because the farmer is economically rewarded for giving you that data. Because when I tip my waiter, I can also tip my farmer. We use blockchain technology to take that funding and give it directly to the farmer, being so transparent and being so organic in their process and following the rules. So I'm doing that with the World Economic Forum. I'm also starting up a metaverse council with the World Economic Forum for the supply chain and manufacturing industrial group of the WEF. And then specifically with the United Nations, when I was the CEO of XPRIZE, I co-launched the AI for Good Summit in Geneva back in 2015 with the Secretary General Zhao, which has been running now for 6 years. They just had the summit, I think 2 weeks ago, AI for Good. And the whole purpose there was just to convene all the experts in AI, in the field of AI from around the world. And they all showed up and actually just start having a dialogue and sharing with one another how AI is being used for very positive things that affect the SDGs. And then think a little bit about policy and regulatory frameworks around AI, which is what the ITU is. The ITU is a specialized agency of the UN that is responsible for AI, communications, satellite, internet, metaverse, et cetera. So I spoke to my former collaborators at the ITU several months ago, and I asked them, "Are you guys doing anything around metaverse?" And they said no. And I said, "Well, why don't we do like we did on the AI for Good? Why don't we do something around metaverse?" So they invited me on March 1st, which was a little over a month ago, to do the opening keynote at their Digital Transformation Summit in Geneva at the UN ITU Summit. This happens every 4 years. It's a rather big summit. And so I went there and I brought 7 young people from South Central LA with me. And so they were on stage with me presenting at the UN at this event a month ago. And you guys can all watch that. I really encourage you to watch the keynote we did because you'll see the 6, 7 young people from my team, suit and tie, presenting to, in six different language, translated in 6 different languages in real time to all the delegates of the UN about metaverse. And they talk like McKinsey consultants. Like you'll be very impressed. If you're interested in watching that video, it's on sdgmetaverseprize.org. You'll find the video right there, the keynote. And what we did was each person stood up and talked about their experiences, talked about how they see it how learning the metaverse and learning this new type of skill set is getting them out of poverty, and helping them, giving them real income, making them relevant to the new job economy. You'll hear teachers, in particular one teacher from National Center for Family Learning, who you and I know real well, Tom, won the Teacher of the Year award, Toyota's Teacher of the Year award, national award winner teacher. She's on there saying, "I just did a 5-month project using virtual reality to transform how I teach, and it is absolutely incredible as a teacher. It's helping me just do things I never thought I could do in terms of having resources and abundance of things that I can use to actually teach." I'll give you a little antidote here, just so you understand the power in the teaching community, especially for low-income schools. This teacher used to have to buy with her own money groceries and bring them into the classroom just to teach kids about how to read nutrition labels and make good choices when they buy products. She would try to literally make a little supermarket in the classroom to try to make it experiential for the students versus showing them PowerPoint slides and, things you could, and so one example, of course, one of the topics we did was healthy living on a budget. That's what we worked at school, and she built a whole supermarket in virtual reality. She gamified it, made it like Jeopardy and stuff. So like that's what we mean by giving a teacher new tools that they never thought they could use when they're struggling in the classroom using their own money just to try to bring products into the classroom to teach students about how to make a healthy choice when they buy products, right? That's the type of thing we're talking about. And then it just goes on like exponentially from there in terms of what you can do. But, at the keynote, we made an announcement that as a way to encourage young people and adult learners around the world to get into this space, to start experimenting with metaverse and start creating things, we were launching a global virtual reality and prize competition around the SDG metaverse, which was specifically pick one of the 17 SDGs, zero hunger, no poverty, gender equality, sustainable consumption and production, life below water. There's 17 key topics of the United Nations Charter. Pick one of those, get into a team of 2 people to 6 people. Then you have 10 months to build out the most fantastic, imaginary, interesting, creative thing you can possibly fathom in any platform that you want. It builds empathy, awareness, and education around that SDG. Don't have to try to solve the SDG. Just bring it to life. What's the issues? What's the opportunities? Build something magical that gets people engaged. And we're going to take the top finalists out of each of them, one from each of the 17. And if you're the top finalist, we're going to give you upwards of $30,000, $40,000, $50,000. And we're going to bring you to the UN next March, and you're going to set up shop and be able to show all the UN delegates the top 17 SDGs. And we hope it creates the first public utility that's open to the world of wanting to go in and see a real good example of one of the 17 or all of the 17 SDGs. We launched that public competition. There's nothing commercial about it. I don't get paid anything. We're not raising money. There's no kickback or there's nothing unusual going on. It's literally just the money that we raise. Like Jessica Alba and the Honest Company they were our first donation. What was important to them was SDG number 12, sustainable consumption and production. That's what the Honest Company is. That's why she started that company. So she gave us $50,000 to help fund headsets for teams that can't afford it, to prize money for the teams that, produce the best environment. And it's just a feel good educational exercise as a way to get people into this space and start building stuff.
Well, let's switch to the Virtual World Society now that we have that on the table.
Mhm.
Put on your Virtual World Society hat as a board member, and how do you see the Virtual World Society playing in this whole lifting of these young people, and how that might evolve with the United Nations
Yeah, well,
Sustainable Development Goal competition that you're talking about?
yeah, I mean, what we've talked about recently with Daniel and yourself and the rest of the board is
Mhm.
I'd invite anyone attending this session if you'd like to participate. It's not hard to participate. Identify, I mean, what we decided with the Virtual World Society is as board members, each one of us can go out to a local school or YMCA or not homeless shelter, but a foster care home location, or just somewhere where we think people are in situations where they need to learn a new skill
Mhm.
set to become economically relevant, or go to your local university or where your kids go to high school. Go in there, ask for an hour to talk to them about virtual reality and metaverse. Share with them all the amazing things that are happening with VR and the metaverse. If you want something to share with them, I'm more than happy to give you some of my slides you can share just to get them all wow factored and get them all excited about it. Then say, hey, you want to do something fun? Form a team, one of these 17 important topics that you have an affinity to, and I will be your mentor over the next 8 months as you guys work to put together an amazing magical space, and we'll compete in this SDG Metaverse Prize. And that's what I'm partnering up with the Virtual World Society, because Exponential Destiny, for me, it's the reason I'm doing is it's going to be a big job interview because the 17 teams that win are going to all be qualified individuals that I can hire on to help me with the next group of schools. A good recruiting
Mhm.
mechanism. But I think
Mhm.
VWS can use it as a community of young people and it's two age groups in the competition, 14 to 18-year-olds and then 19-year-olds and above. So you don't have college university students competing against high school students. So yeah, I think what we've talked about strategically is VWS can come on not as a sponsor, but actually as a partner to help me recruit the proper teams. Because the goal is to get, I learned this from X Prize, whenever you run a competition, you're really sourcing genius from the crowd. But the only way you can find the needle in the haystack and get it to come to you is if you generate a formula of rapid experiments, critical mass with diversity. So if we don't get at least 3 or 4 teams competing per SDG, very diverse teams. So maybe one's a group of artists from a high school, another is a group of engineers from a completely different
Mhm.
demographic in high school. Diversity is important. And critical mass, meaning we've got 3 or 4 teams versus just 1 or 2 teams competing. And then we let them experiment, because they got 10 months, so they can go through a fail and learn cycle if they need to. They can build something, say, that's not that interesting or it's not that magical. Good. We got plenty of time. We can go recreate something else. If you can create that environment for people to experiment, trial and error, and learn, you ameliorate those designs at a rapid pace to where, yes, we should end up with 17 extraordinary experiences on the SDGs in the metaverse. And that's really the partnership with VWS is
Mhm.
to go out to our communities and start to recruit teams and just simply get them toward the website, get them to sign up, and then you like their chaperone. Just make sure they're always engaged, make sure they don't atrophy out of it. My team will do all the work. We're going to teach them how to build, how to design, how to create, all that stuff. We just need partners, individuals that just want to help us get get teams excited about it and get into it.
In the longer term, what say that we look at ahead the kind of mission we have in the Virtual World Society to lift humanity? What can you envision the next 5 years or so what should we be doing the next
Well,
5 years?
I have a theory of impact and a theory of change on education, which is because I mean, I know I'm preaching the choir here. We all realize that the education system, even in private schools, quite frankly, can't stay up with the pace of educational change, especially because they're kind of bureaucracies and especially lower income communities where it's even more rigid. So that verdict's out. I don't think anyone debates that point anymore. It's very difficult to stay up with the educational requirements. So what I
Mhm.
think will happen in society is I think that individuals like us will move to a mentorship model where the only way we're going to educate generations into new economy jobs is if each one of us via virtual reality technology, because it lets us do it so easily, hops into a room like this and educates with our expertise, educate some young people on something to help them build that skill set. Because teachers aren't going to keep up with all this skill set. What, a teacher is going to become an expert in all the hot topics like AI, robotics, 3D printing, biotech? No, they're not. So what a teacher needs to do is just coordinate getting individuals from society that want to donate their time come in and speak to their students. Now, that was kind of clunky and wasn't that effective over a web call. But now that a teacher, hopefully within the next year or two, has headsets for every student, I can bring students into my environment to teach them about an area of expertise that I have. Maybe I've created an environment where I'm not just speaking to them like a lecture, like in a classroom. I'm actually taking them through some tour that I created as a private individual to teach my craft, and now I can take other people into it. And I think that I think the direction that it would be very solid for VWS to go is, how do we use virtual reality as an environment to where we essentially don't replace the education systems, the school systems, but we build an environment in which private individuals, as a form of charity, rather than donating money to a charity, they donate their time and expertise to
Mhm.
host, 10,000, 1,000, 500, or five young people in a room, or adult learners, teach them something relevant so they can go out and get jobs. I think that will be the transformation with education. It will be the
Mhm.
savior to it, because right now there's no safety net for it.
When we think about the metaverse, which is really going to be fueling this transformation, um, we have an opportunity to the metaverse it could be everywhere, right? Especially in homes. We know the one of the missions, one of the thrusts of the virtual world society is in making learning centers in the home, because that's where really the education of human superpowers take place. But not
Mhm.
only the things that we learn about to get along with each other, but our imagination, how imagination can grow, especially these skills that you're talking about that normally aren't taught in the schools, of art and music and those kind of things that are so important for creating the content of the future, generally are not appreciated or really helped in going to institutional education. So, how do you see that happening with the metaverse and homes, individuals,
I think
consumers?
I think your vision for HomeSpark, which is piggybacking on what I was just talking about as far
Mhm,
as private citizens creating environments to teach others. I think if people want to get educated, you won't have to go to a formal school system to get educated. You could, in your home, like your vision, Tom, for HomeSpark, in your home with your family, you can get on a headset, and sure, you can play video games and do all these fantastic things, but you can also enter Marcus's room or Tom's room or the Virtual
mhm,
World Society room,
mhm,
and basically you just get access to most immersive and experiential interactive social education and learning experience you could ever get access to. And they'll filter out, right? Because there'll
yeah,
be a lot of them out there in the
yeah,
beginning, but eventually we'll learn where's the best place for someone to learn math. Oh, did you ever check
mhm,
out so and so's metaverse? It's in
mhm,
crazy. You walk in there and you can
mhm,
learn math, especially if you're a visual learner. Oh, but this is more of
mhm,
an I'm not a visual learner. Okay, go over there to Kevin's space over there on the metaverse, because he does it, but he does it more with nuts and bolts math, if that's the way you like to learn. And people will find
mhm,
their spaces, but I think we'll all be able to create, it's like every individual can create their own little mini university. I think that will be a
mhm,
metaverse that BWS should organize and connect all those together. But we have to do that because schools are not going to keep up with the pace of education. Now, what I think the schools will be good at is, it's a place you go physically meet to do the things you can't do when you're online, like
mhm,
art and plays
mhm,
and baseball and fitness, and do your homework at school. Like, I think that's what the physical school will become, the place where you build social skills, because all your learning is happening in some environment that's digitally social. So it's not really personably social.
mhm,
So I talk about on the exponentialdestiny.org website. I actually have this whole video on this theory of change of that I think the education system will evolve to. But yeah, and I think I think nonprofits that have, you know, respected individuals like you, Tom, that have always been in the right cause with the right heart behind it, I think will be the pioneers that bring that will be the moderators of that whole environment when it happens. It's garbage in, garbage out. So
yeah,
there'll be a lot of junk out there in the metaverse. I think BWS will be able to say, look, there's a network out there. There's thousands of players in this metaverse, but you know what? If you want to learn about this in your home, Here's how you get set up and
Mm,
do it. And then this is the path you should go in the metaverse to go get the best education.
mm,
It's almost like Nielsen ratings telling you which shows are the best
yeah.
shows.
Well, that's fantastic. Really appreciate that vision. Well, I'm looking at the time, and Marcus, and maybe we ought to open up some questions from the audience.
Sure.
So let's ask Natalie if you could help us with that. And
Sure.
um, those of you who are interested in asking a question or making a comment, why don't you raise your hand? And Natalie, who is our operations consultant on the Virtual World Society, will give you the microphone and you can ask the question.
So if you are interested in doing that, there is a raise hand button to the right of your menu. Go ahead and click on that raise hand button, and that will let me know that you have a question. The first person on our list is Steph. Steph, go ahead and ask your question.
Yes, I was wondering, since things are going so quickly, we've just seen like DALL-E do things that may wind up uh, making clip art of anything you can even think of, let alone just knowing where to go to look for it. And that includes your 3D modeling and everything else. With it going so fast, how do you keep ahead of it so that these kids aren't learning something that they're not going to use by the time they get into the workplace?
That's a really good question. I mean, one thing that when we go into a school and work with a school, or when we work with to train and upskill and reskill these young people and adult learners, I don't want to say they're all young people. It's basically anyone who's in an economically stressed situation that's looking for a skill set that would be relevant to get employed. The first thing we say to them is, we're going to show you spatial, we're going to show you engage, we're going to show you AltspaceVR, we're going to show you mesmerize, we're going to show you all the platforms because they all do. Quite frankly, if you learn one, you've learned 70% of all of them. So it's an easy transition to walk around and chew gum at the same time in any of these environments is pretty much the same functions and features. However, they all have their own special, unique things that you can do and how you create. But we basically say don't get in bed too much with one platform because you'll be stuck. It's like back in the day when big companies used to just do SAP. You know, now you're on SAP software for life as a company, even when that SAP software doesn't work very well. So it's the same thing here. So we to remain relevant, learn all of these things and always be learning. So like, one of the guys on my team, his name is Pablo. He's 19 years old. He's the one who takes his LiDAR from his phone or a drone. He got drone certified just so he could fly a drone to take the topography of some location and then bring it into virtual reality. I did that 4 or 5 years ago. It cost me a lot of money and it was really hard technical. Now he's doing it with a drone and some LiDAR. He's doing it right off his iPhone 13. So they're constantly learning and we're constantly showing them things, but I tell them day one, everything will change within a few months. This will all be different. So you just have to learn how to learn. And then, in an interesting way, once they do that, they kind of get excited. It's like I know some of us get addicted to having an Amazon package show up at our door each day. We're so excited. We get addicted to it. It's like they're excited by, hey, did you see this new feature in spatial? Like now we can do this, now we can do that. Like it's fun. They like to learn about the new stuff. So I'm glad that things are changing so quickly. So we condition them from day one. Everything's going to change overnight and it's all going to get better. I mean, the good news is it's all going to get better. It's going to be fun because everything gets more sophisticated. I mean, we're now waiting for the front facing camera so we can have lip syncing and nostrils flaring and eyebrows raising and all that.
And the avatars.
No, but
right?
I mean, literally, I did some projects for some corporate clients 2.5 years ago. A lot of you guys know Michael Potts, extraordinary designer, can build these worlds professionally. I really had to contract him, and he's rightfully so expensive, meaning he charges thousands and thousands of dollars because he's a master. He uses professional software. He builds out amazing exact replicas, and he still does that for companies that need exact replicas. But if I have a client that says I just need to build a factory or I need to build a park and a zoo or something like, whatever it is, we can do that you can do that just by grabbing stuff off online or going into some of these easy to use softwares where you can create your own. We even teach them how to go to Google Paintbrush and make stuff and then bring it in. We've done like raindrops to make rain and stuff and paint, brought in. So it's really fun. We hack the system a lot though. We've definitely used some of these platforms in ways they never thought. Like we were taking graphic images of grass off the internet, where you find you do a Google search on grass, you right mouse click, you save it as a PDF, you bring it in the PowerPoint, right? And we would literally bring that PDF, the grass, into a room like this, and we would make it really big, and we'd start laying grass tiles. And that's how we would make a lawn. And so, no one knew that's how no one was thinking that's how you make a room that looks like grass. But so we started to hack the system just by taking in stuff in from PowerPoint stuff. So it's amazing how in a year's time you can do all of this stuff homegrown, and you can get. And then you've got some platforms like Engage that, I don't know if many of you know this, but Engage platform lets you record, and then you can record within those recordings. So I could puppeteer a dinosaur running into this room and puppeteer it and record it, but then I can replay the recording and remove the strings so you don't see my string manipulating it. And then I can just hit play and a dinosaur will run across the room. But then I can put a recording into that recording and then another recording into that recording. And before you know it, I've created theater in here with 1,000 things happening. And it's all programmed like running animation in PowerPoint. The young people love doing that. I mean, then you're totally using your creative skill sets to build out. Now think about an education environment where you're trying to teach someone about something. If you can animate the world like theater,
So we do have another question. Stephen, go ahead and ask your question.
Hello, Marcus. If I'm interested in helping participate in SDG 3, how would I best communicate with somebody and participate in some way?
Yeah, that would be great. I mean, you could email me directly, or if you go to the sdgmetaverseprize.org website, you can fill out the form there, or just email us at, I think it's info@sdgmetaverseprize.org is the email address.
Great.
You can email me at marcus@exponentialdestiny.org, MARCUS. Because we are looking for champions for each SDG, someone that really who's a domain expert, because I don't have domain expertise over the SDGs. We'll help with the technical stuff of helping them figure out how to build stuff. We need people within each SDG that wants to organize teams and help the teams, keep it moving.
So we are at time, but we do have one more person with a question. Do we have time for one more question?
Sure. Let's press ahead.
Okay. All right. So we're going to take this last question from George 3D. George 3D, go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, thank you. Laite down there in the blue and myself are in Fiji, and Wildography is working on projects in Uganda, and we're trying to do exactly what you are talking about, but we need some alliances, some support, some experienced help, because I feel like I'm kind of really struggling hard with no support, trying to do exactly what is needed, like I see VR and related technologies as being extremely important in developing countries, education and job creation. And right now, we don't even have headsets that work in a tropical country. So we really need some connections to help us advance this.
I'd be happy to connect with you. And I mean, what I would suggest is get in touch with me. And I think this is probably not the best reference, but I think the gateway drug is get people into this SDG Metaverse Prize competition. A bunch of people participating in it, and then you'll start to see awareness being built on it. People have fun with it, and then next thing you know, you can say, yeah, by the way, this is a great thing to use in your schools too to transform education. And we have a whole playbook around how to do that. And I'm working with some folks out of Australia right now. Edith University is doing an efficacy study for me, so I've got good relationships in that part of the world too. So just reach out to me, and I'm happy to share with you what we're doing. But I think you should champion getting some teams from Fiji that work on the Metaverse Prize. Maybe Life Below Water. You guys are surrounded by all the water.
We can try, but here, very few people who know about VR typically associated with gaming. It's like trying to bring more, they've banned phones from schools. There's students coming out of 12 years of education, and they don't know they can ask their phone a question. That's where we're at here. It's like pushing mud uphill here. But we can try. We definitely will.
My strategy is crawl, walk, run. I can help you with the crawl phase, and then we'll figure out the walk phase next.
Thank you. We really appreciate that. I'm sure Wildography will also be able to benefit from this, because we're talking about working together. Like soon Laite can start teaching the girls in Uganda, because we are doing 3D printing and making headlights for people that work at night. Surgical lights will be next. If you Google surgical lights and developing countries, it's a disaster. A lot of complications because of bad light during surgery. So we're getting the correct color temperature LED lights and making real, because these various things need to be made in the villages so they can be fixed. There's a real cycle of poverty where people buy these cheap Chinese LED lights that barely work for a couple of days and they throw them out and buy another one. So what we're doing is
reach out
making
to me.
reliable things, repairing, making egg incubators out of broken refrigerators, things like that, that really help.
I don't know if I can help you with that whole scope, but I can help you with the getting some. My theory is this: if you get one or two people in a community to where all of a sudden all their peers are saying, "You're doing what? You're getting paid what to be a VR metaverse designer?" and you're working. That's what happened in South Central LA. All of a sudden, people in the community are like, "Marco, you're making 60,000 plus a year helping companies design in the metaverse, and it's not even technical." Tell me a little bit more about that. What is that? Because I'm over here flipping burgers at a restaurant. Can I get into this? I mean, that's kind of what you need, is a few people that are success stories in the community to start getting people talking. It doesn't happen overnight, but that's the best way to promote change. Just an ending here too. The fun thing is we got asked to go to Rwanda at the end of May, June 1st, 2nd, and 3rd in Rwanda. The United Nations ITU is having a global youth summit where they're going to have they expect to have 10,000 people attending between the ages of 14 and 30. And it's a thing that the UN is having through the ITU to connect. It's called Generations Connect, to try to get young people having more influence over the UN's policy setting, especially around digital. And so we're going to I'm taking my whole team to Rigali. Is it Rigali or Kigali? Rigali, Rwanda, where we're going to do similar keynote and then use it as a registration drive for the prize model. That will be fun too.
It'll be a good
Okay,
idea
that
to
was it
follow
for
up with
questions.
Marcus on this. No more questions?
No more questions.
Okay, well, just let me remind you that the Virtual World Society, go to our website, virtualworldsociety.org. And we have opportunities for a number of volunteer activities. See here, we're working on a revised and renewed newsletter. We would really be happy to have volunteers, Discord, Facebook group moderators, and our role building program. So those are opportunities for you, and we're going to be having some other events coming up. Those of you who are interested in event moderation and helping us with these kinds of events and our community events, our firesides and community events, we're going to have an event coming up on May the 4th, that moderation training. Then every 2 weeks, we have a VWS community event, just to meet up, to just chat about things. And it's not structured a little bit, but it's a chance really to get to know each other and those things that people are concerned about and want to do, and how we can build these kind of groups, smaller groups to do these things. And then we're going to have another fireside chat here in this space on May the 26th. Every fourth Thursday, 1 o'clock, we'll be having that. So I think that's it. Let me see if I can get my last slide here. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for coming. And Marcus, you and I can hang out for a few minutes here if people want to come up and
Sure.
chat with us individually. So everyone, thank you for coming. Enjoy the rest of the week and the springtime, at least in Seattle, the springtime. And look forward to seeing you next time. Take care.